Did you want to admit everyone? There you go.
Right, so good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Northwest and West Community Forum for Cambridge. I'm Philippa Kelly. I'm the Strategic Sites Manager for the Greater Cambridge Shared Planning Service. This community forum is jointly delivered by South Cambridgeshire District Council and Cambridge City Council, and it brings it in line with other City Edge forums, for example, at North East Cambridge and Cambridge East. These community forums are for new neighbourhoods which arise from growth in Greater Cambridge. They bring residents, council officers, councillors, developers and other stakeholders together to raise issues and discuss how the developments are moving forward. Forums provide an opportunity for discussion and for information sharing, but they're not part of the formal planning process. Please could you note that the forum is being recorded this evening and it will be available on the City Council's website after this meeting. Now, could I first start by asking, are there any elected members present from either the District Council or the City Council? And if you are, please could you make your presence known, perhaps by using the raise the hand function or making yourself known in the Q&A chat function? Good evening, Simon Smith. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, good evening. I'm Simon Smith. I'm a councillor representing Castle Ward. And I'm also chair of the Joint Development Control Committee, which determines planning applications at Darwin Green and Eddington.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I'll just make one final call. If there are any other councillors present this evening, please do let me know. Okay, so what I'll do now is I will move on and we'll look at the agenda for this evening. So the agenda tonight has updates in respect of the two main residential sites and also an update on community activity. In respect of Darwin Green, we have Adrian Jarman from Barratt David Wilson Homes. For Eddington, we have Matt Johnson from Cambridge University. And for the community development update, we have Suzanne Jackson and Steph Snowden from the city's community development team. And last but not least, our guest speaker this evening is David Park from Cambridgeshire and Peterborough NHS Integrated Care System. This evening, we've also got representatives present from key stakeholder organisations who will be available to respond to any questions which may be raised during the course of this evening. Thank you to all our partners who support this forum and thank you to everyone presenting. Now, in terms of general housekeeping arrangements, questions relating to the presentations this evening or the wider development in this area can be written in the Q&A function, or alternatively, you can raise a hand at the end of each presentation. If we are unable to answer your question, we will endeavour to provide a written response after the meeting, which will be shared on the forum website. And as a final introductory note from me, I'm keen to ensure that we keep to the allotted times for each of the updates. This may mean that I might have to move on to the next update before all questions have been answered, but I will endeavour to ensure that outstanding questions are then picked up as part of the general Q&A session at the end of this forum. So we're going to move now to the presentations and discussions. And as we move on to these site updates, can I just remind the speakers of the importance of sticking to their time to allow the forum to run smoothly and to allow enough time for questions. So first up on the agenda, I'm just going to give a short planning update in respect of the site within Darwin Green, which we know as Parcel 2-3. And this is part of the wider Darwin Green site. Hopefully you'll be able to see this on the next slide. And this site is allocated at the top northeastern part of Darwin Green. It's bounded along the top northern boundary by the A14, as you can see here. And this site is allocated for development in the South Cambridgeshire local plan. If you could just move on to the next slide, please. This just shows in more detail the red line site boundary of this site. Now, some of you may remember that there has been a planning application for outline planning permission for 1,000 residential dwellings plus associated facilities. That was an application submitted to the local planning authority, but a planning appeal was submitted to the planning inspectorate by the applicant Barrett David Wilson Homes last summer. The appeal was subsequently recovered, which meant that the final decision would be made by the Secretary of State. If we could just move on to the next slide, please. So the council's position was that if the planning appeal against determination had not been made, the council would have refused planning permission because of concerns about the supply of drinking water to the site. And earlier in the year, in January, a 12-day planning inquiry was held at which the case for and against the development proposals was put forward in front of a planning inspector. The council's position at that time was based around the supply of drinking water to the site and potential harm of abstraction on groundwater bodies, including chalk aquifers. Representatives from the Environment Agency also put forward their position that the development proposals were, in their view, not acceptable because of concerns about the ability to provide a sustainable drinking water supply to the site. At the end of that planning inquiry, the planning inspector sent their detailed report into their findings to the Secretary of State for consideration. The decision letter was issued last month on the 25th of September on behalf of the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government. And the Secretary of State agreed with the planning inspector's conclusions and recommendations and found that the planning appeal for this development should be allowed and that planning permission should be granted subject to planning conditions and a relevant Section 106 legal agreement. And we can share the link to that decision letter, including the inspector's report, on our website. So the issue of this planning decision now means that the site has the benefit of outline planning permission. But before any development can take place on this site, there will be the need for further detailed planning applications to come forward and be submitted to the local planning approval for consideration. But at the present time, the local planning authority isn't aware of the landowner's precise plans to bring forward the site now that they've got their outline planning permission. But we would anticipate that in doing so, they would engage fully with the local community and that they would also provide updates on the timeframes and the delivery of that site through this forum at a later date. So that brings me to the end of the update about the Darwin Green appeal. I'm happy to take any questions. I'll have a quick look in the Q&A. No, there's only one question relating to the University of Cambridge. We'll have that later on. I'll therefore move on to the next item. So the next item on the agenda is an update in respect of the Darwin Green 1 site. And I'd like to introduce my colleague John Shuttlewood, who's a principal planner from the Shared Planning Service, and Adrian Jarman from Barrett David Wilson Homes. Thank you both.
Thank you very much, Philippa. Good evening, everybody. Hope you can hear me. I've just heard myself for a second there on the echo. I think I'll have a first go before handing you over to Adrian, if I may. So my name's up first there. So I just want to give you a quick verbal update across Eddington and Darwin Green. Matt's going to give you an expansion of these topics, I'm sure, regarding Eddington. But just to basically outline that the university has indeed started engagement with the local planning authority on the next stage of the Eddington proposals. And they've also had discussions about improving the lighting along the Ridgeway, which is an important public cycleway and walkway, and they're speaking to ecologists about the impact that the lighting may have. And recently there's also been an approval for the bus gate on the in the middle of Eddington to change from a pop-up gate and bollards to an ANPR camera system when going through there. Moving on to Darwin Green, there continues to be applications coming in to discharge various conditions across all parcels 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and these are being processed. Also regarding the sports pavilion, there's conditions being discharged on there, and we're hoping, I'm sure Adrian will pick up on this as well, but we're looking to hopefully the pavilion and the pitches will be operational at some point next summer. In light of the Darwin Green Term 3 decision by the Secretary of State, there's been a number of questions concerning the school and when the secondary school will be operational on the site on Darwin Green 2, and what the current state of the primary school is. Currently, at the moment, I do believe that the County Council are shortly going to be having meetings with BDW regarding the primary school. And unfortunately for everyone else I'll say the same thing to everyone now who I've already said regarding the secondary school. Secondary school is a years away from being built off, simply because there is a lot of work to be done to the site to prepare itself to then start actually building the school and the residential units on there. So that's going to be quite a number of years down the line. However, in the recent time, permission has been granted last month at committee for a new plot number 2 on parcel 5 and 6, and amending to the surrounding 4 plots. So it's acceptable and doesn't have a large impact on the residential amenity around the surrounding area. And just a personal kind of just an advert to say that I'm actually restarting the drop-in planning services, where you can come in residents and ask any questions you like at Darwin Green Community Rooms on a Wednesday. That dovetails with our community open spaces. Wednesday mornings, they normally take place between 9 and 12. I'm proposing to basically hold this once a month on the last Wednesday of each month. I did a test one yesterday and it was well attended, so thank you very much for attending. I propose the next one to be the 27th of November. Darwin Green Rooms, community rooms, and between 9 and 12. If you've got any questions, drop in and ask. Or in the meantime, if you want to ask anything, you can also email me at john.shuttleworth@greatercambridge planning.org.uk and have a look at the posts. Before handing on to Adrian, there's a question from Anthony about whether there's going to be any commissioning post-occupancy evaluations and publishing results of the lesson learned. I'm sure Adrian and BDW General will look at that and will answer that. What's happening to the old pavilion? Thank you very much for that, Anthony. Again, I think there's something going on in the background then, but I think that Adrian may or may not be in a better position. I personally don't have any knowledge that I can publicly give you at this moment in time, but perhaps Adrian can or might be able to before, during or after his profile that we will now bring up. Adrian, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. I'll just share my presentation. Good evening, everybody. So I'll just do a slideshow. So just a brief update on where we are with Darwin Green. So on the BDW2 parcel, in September, we had our first customers move into Barratt Homes, which was one of the 10 plots which wasn't demolished. The rebuild plots are progressing at speed up on both David Wilson and Barratt's, and in October we will have 2 more completions, both in the Barratt brand. On to BDW4. Our first block of apartments looking over the Central Park is now at roof stage, and we have 3 other blocks approaching roof level quite quickly. We're on target for our first completions on this phase of the development to be in May 2025, with the occupation of the apartments overlooking the Central Park. So what's happened since June? So again, just touching on where John was, as you can see from the pictures there, the maintenance regime is ongoing. Talbot Landscapes are still maintaining the sports pitches. We're still endeavouring to get Sports England independent sign-off late in November/December. and we anticipate that the pitches will be available for use in early summer 2025. On the retail units, Savills are still dealing with marketing the units for us, and we do have interest, again, with a coffee shop, a ladies' hair salon and convenience store. We are in heads of terms to agree the lease of these retail units, and we anticipate that we should have these fully occupied by the end of March. Sorry about that. And then from the last forum meeting, we was asked to clearly mark on BDW1 and the visitor parking bays, so the visitors knew where they were allowed to park legally, and the pictures there just demonstrate various areas around BDW1 which have been clearly marked out now, so everyone will know where the visitor spaces are. Future next steps. The lease for the library has now been agreed, and it's with Cambridge for signing. Snagging works are progressing in the building with a view to formally handing over the building to Cambridge in December this year. Sports Pavilion building. So the modular units were installed in September, and as you can see, the brickwork is being built around the perimeter. The internal works are progressing. I was in the unit on Wednesday, and the flooring was being laid, and the club room suspended ceiling will be installed shortly. Upon completion of their installation works, the external finishes will be carried out, and we'd expect this building to be fully complete and operational by March 2025. The Central Park. The main Central Park commenced construction in August. As you can see from the pictures, the tarmac footways through the whole of the Central Park have now been completed, and there's a little bit left on the left-hand side there that's still to tarmac. The main tree planting works will be installed in December to March, as well as all the other landscaping works, and we do expect all of this will be complete by June 2025, ready for when our customers move into their new apartments. Allotments. So the allotments on BDW2, the car park and the shared drive access way was tarmacked on Wednesday, and as you can see, the floor slab for the new building on the allotments, they're just about to pour the concrete floor. We would expect that this should be ready for target completion for March 2025. And if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Adrian. I can see Simon's hand is up, so Philippa, I don't know whether you'd like to ask Simon before, but there is a couple of questions possibly for Adrian. Don't know if Adrian can answer them or not on the question and answer chat.
Right. Shall we go for the questions in the chat first? Because I saw they've been in for some time, then we'll move to Simon. So, Adrian, there's a question about the old pavilion and what is happening to it.
Yeah, the old pavilion, we're expecting to complete the sale of the old pavilion. I can't remember the new, but I will put it on the chat for later. I don't have their name, but they intend to refurbish the old pavilion, bring it back to its former glory, and have it as a creche and drop-in coffee house or something of that ilk.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you for that update. There's also a question in the chat, Adrian, about post-commissioning occupancy evaluations, whether it's there's any proposals to do surveys about the new residents that have moved into these properties.
We haven't got anything planned at this moment in time, but that doesn't mean that we won't do it. I'll take that away and I'll have to report back.
Thank you. Shall we move now to Councillor Smith, who I saw you'd had your hand up earlier? Is it still up, Simon?
Yes. Thank you very much, Philippa. Adrian, just a word of thanks and appreciation for marking out the visitor spaces on BDW1. So raised that in the last forum meeting, so it's absolutely great to see that that's been done. I think that's going to help residents enormously and their visitors, so really appreciate that. On the pavilion, my understanding is that the purchasers have signed the agreement for purchase, but they're now enduring further delays, and I'm just wondering whether you can expedite that. I know there are a number of signatories relating to this, so it would be great if they could be given a firm date for completion, because their investment proposition is a very attractive one, and it'll be a real asset to the community if you finally complete that deal.
Yeah.
The other point that's come up from residents are concerns around the change in the estate management provider, the facilities management provider, and I think then what they, to sum up, they're complaining more around deterioration in service and rising costs. And I know that you share this concern as well, and I was just wondering whether you've got anything positive to say about how that's going to be addressed. Thank you.
We've been in dialogue with the Darwin Green Residents Association since July. We've had a number of meetings with them. We're seeking legal advice through our own legal team and lawyers, because most of the development is with in a management company with Encore, but BDW1 was used to be with Chamonix, which then got sold out to Firstport. So we're looking at a mechanism of how we can get Firstport removed, and Darwin Green Residents Association put in place. There's a few legal hurdles at the minute, and we've got another meeting. I think it's next week.
Thank you very much. That's very encouraging, Adrian.
Yeah, I mean, we gave our assurances to the residents when we met them, and we will support them in making sure that we do get Firstport removed, but it's taken a little bit longer than we anticipated.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that update, Adrian. Adrian, I've just noticed in the chat there's some quite positive feedback from Tam Parry, who is one of our colleagues from the County Council's Transportation Highways team. Tam just wanted to say that the gentleman on the crossing over the construction access road is a very nice person and was very helpful to a big group of us crossing today. So please could you pass on thanks from Tam?
I will. I'll speak to Bardi myself next time I'm on site.
Fabulous.
He is a very nice gentleman.
Good feedback. Right, we've got another question in the chat for you, Adrian. Good question around the potential supermarket. Any update on that?
Well, it's the supermarket land is still with the landowners. It's not part of what we've bringing through to the development. And at the moment, I don't think from memory that they still don't have an operator involved or with any interest in the supermarket land at the moment. But again, I will get my land director to speak with the landowners again, and I will put an update onto the forum.
Thanks, that's really helpful. Now, someone's put a point in the chat. They've referred to some research findings from a Cambridge University PhD student regarding the impacts of poor urban design on health and well-being of people. I was wondering whether whoever posted that comment, maybe you could provide a link to that information, those research findings, just to share more widely, or maybe that's something that we can add to our website update after the end of this forum. I think it was more of a statement for people to familiarise themselves rather than requesting comment on that, Adrian. So we can just move on now. I'm just having a quick look at the chat. I don't think there's any more questions specifically for either you or John. But if anybody does post any further questions during the course of this evening, we may have time to come back to those at the end of this evening's update. So thank you very much for your update now. And I will now move on to our next speaker. So next on the agenda is Matt Johnson, who is Cambridge University's Head of Development. And Matt is going to be providing an update in respect of Eddington. Thank you, Matt. Over to you.
Thank you, Philippa. Share my slides. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. Okay. So moving through here, so we have recently launched Eddington, as was mentioned earlier, our new consultation process for the revised master plan application. The context for why we've done that, so our original planning consent was granted in 2013, and that outline consent had a 10-year restriction on the delivery of residential units. So that expired in February of 2023, and that means that we're not able to submit any further reserved matters applications under that outline consent. Obviously, the schemes that are on site at the moment have already received their planning consents, and that's why they're being delivered currently. But we find ourselves in a position now where we need to renew that master plan and bring forward new proposals to take forward the rest of the phases at Eddington. So it's going to take you through some of the elements of our first round of public consultation that we conducted over the last couple of months. Firstly, looking backwards, what's been delivered or committed to date. So we've got 686 affordable homes for university staff on site, 1,152 market homes at various stages of delivery, some of those occupied, some of those the homes that you can see being built today, 325 postgraduate student rooms occupied by Girton College, our primary school, the nursery, the Storiesfield Community Centre, our Sainsbury's supermarket and retail units, hotel, and all of our green space down at Brookleys and our playing fields. And there's a sample there of some of the awards that have been won for various different plots at Eddington, including most recently another Housing Design Award for Alison Brooks' work with Hill on the Rubicon building, which are the 5 glazed brick buildings that were completed last year. So looking at our updated vision for Eddington for the future phases, and it's very much a continuation of the vision that really started the project back in 2013. Some of the key points there that we're thinking about in developing these plans and that we're talking to the community about, integrating our sustainable design principles throughout, as we did in the first phase, creating an exemplar in placemaking, again, a critical part of our vision early on, securing the university's long-term future, and that's really the raison d'etre for why the university is engaging in this housing project, and that is to secure accommodation that we can provide to our staff at discounted rates to ensure that we can continue to attract and retain the best staff from around the world, and supporting the wider Cambridge ecosystem. So through our placemaking, green spaces and additional market homes, how we're helping the city as well. To that point, one of our first guiding principles is the need for new homes. And what that means in terms of the future of the master plan, we're looking at bringing in additional density compared to the original 3,000 homes that were consented. So as I mentioned a moment ago, of those 3,000 homes, we've got around 1,850 that are committed and at various stages of delivery today. And we'll be looking to take the density on the site to over 5,000 dwellings. So that's another 3,200 or 3,500 homes compared to what is already committed to on site. And just to give people a feel for what that kind of density may look like, it's effectively a continuation of the average density of Eddington that's been achieved in phase 1. So ranging from 5 or 6 story apartment buildings down to 2 and 3 story housing. Once that's put across the master plan on the elements of the site that we were intending on building on, notably 50% of the site will remain as various forms of open space, then we get to over 5,500 units. So whilst it's densification compared to the previous master plan, it's very much a continuation of what we've seen achieved at Eddington so far. So to that point, we're enhancing the delivery of new housing. We think it's critical to make sure with the shortage of housing that we have in Cambridge that we do exploit that opportunity here to bring forward the housing so that it doesn't have to go to other greenbelt sites or elsewhere around the city. And we're particularly well placed at Eddington because of the university's investment in the neighbourhood centre as our first step. So the primary school was the first building occupied on site, for example, and we've seen all of the other community facilities come forward prior to seeing that rollout of the housing. And so we think it's a very important place to make sure that we have those additional homes and take advantage of the investments that have been made in placemaking to date. The key worker housing again, so that's the reason the university is engaging in this project, and that is to bring in that university housing that we can use to attract and retain our staff, and the housing for local communities, increasing that supply and helping the housing market in Cambridge to improve affordability. Another one of our principles, safe, green and accessible public realm. So in the early conversations we've had with the community, and we held 4 or 5 events where we spoke to various different members of the local community, the big thing coming back from that was access to nature, green space and open and accessible transport routes, particularly active travel. So that's something we've really heard, and we're focused on making sure that we integrate that into our proposals in the future phase master plan. Some of those ideas, what they might actually look like. So, for example, introducing green loops around the neighbourhood, and including running routes, and obviously incorporating park run in the permanent setup of the Western Edge, for example. And that gives people lots of different diversity of places that they can explore and enjoy the green space within Eddington. There'll be lots of new play spaces for families and young people, further sports provision and changes to the existing sports pitches, providing for a variety of different sports. We're very keen that it's not just open grass pitches aimed at football, but we introduce lots of diversity into the sports that are available at Eddington. Space for nature, so targeting greater than a 10% biodiversity net gain on top of what we've already achieved in our first phase activities, and looking at shared gardens that will bring doorstep play right to people's doorsteps and pull the green space from the Western Edge right into the plots where we'll be delivering the housing. Some of those ambitions that underpin those ideas, so fostering healthy living, reducing whole place carbon footprint, and that's quite a holistic approach to this topic, and making sure that we're not doing things such as moving earth around multiple times, for example, to ensure that the embodied carbon of the site is reduced as much as we can, and making sure that we design for the present and the future. And that's about taking the lessons learned from the first phase and the changes that we've seen in the industry and society in the meantime, and making sure that we actively think about how we adapt the design today, but also make sure that the design is adaptable in the future to respond to further technological changes, for example. Next steps on our consultation timeline. As I say, this is a short snippet of the consultation materials that we presented recently, and all of those are available on our website. We'll be coming back for a further iteration, so taking what we've heard from this round of public consultation and responding to that through that design, and then presenting that back to the community in winter, and that's going to be probably in the first 2 weeks of December that we'll be looking to do that. So please watch out for advertisements for those community forum events, and please do come along, see what we're presenting there, and provide further feedback. We're then hopeful to have a further iteration of design and representation to the community in spring 2025, before moving into detailed planning application production and submitting that in summer 2025. And that would be the end of you hearing from us. Once we've submitted that, we'll hold further events that will give you an opportunity to come and ask us questions rather than having to leaf through all of the documents that will be submitted. You'll be able to come and see further exhibitions and talk to us about the proposals that we've submitted, as I say, summer next year. So I'm going to move on from that onto an update of things that are happening live on site now. So this is my sort of usual slide explaining what plots are happening currently. Just grab my laser pointer, excuse me. So we can see here S1, S2, which is the 2 plots here forming a J shape adjacent to the Ridgeway. That's underway currently with Present Made. They're building 373 build-to-rent homes, and they're well underway there now, and will be completing plots through 2025, 2026. We have Durkan, who've just commenced the construction of a road access through to their plot M4, M5 over here, which is 160 houses and apartments for market sale. And then M3, the building that forms the kind of fourth edge of Eddington Square, and adjacent to our cricket pitch there. That's been delivered by Hill, and you'll see that that has been advancing very rapidly recently as well. The other plot that's on site at the moment is Lot 4, which appears on the ground, very much continuation of what Hill have done at Knights Park at M1 and M2. M1 and M2 have now sold all of their homes, and Lot 4 is starting to release further homes of a similar style into the market. So other recent things that have been happening on site, I mentioned earlier, the Rubicon building on my right there won the Housing Design Award, which is fantastic and shows continued interest in the sort of evolving architecture of Eddington. We've had our new play space at the end of Gildenhow open, and that's brilliant to have that all that additional area for children to go and play, and it's now obviously safe and accessible that it's come out of the Knights Park construction zone. And then we were privileged to have the Housing Minister visit as well as part of a broader visit to Cambridge by the government, including the Housing Minister and the Science Minister. But we took the Housing Minister on a walk around Eddington to talk about the site and get his questions to inform the new government's policies for housing going forward. Retail announcements. So Outspoken Cycles, you may have seen them emerging in Eddington Square. They are opening on Saturday. And importantly, the first 75 visitors will receive a free gift. So please do go along if you're available on Saturday and say hi to those guys. That's been a long time coming, and I think it's a fantastic thing to introduce to our square. They'll be doing some of the university's Dr. Bike sessions as well, which is where we offer free bike maintenance, as well as stocking new bikes and cycling accessories and things in there. We have La Pizzica as well, and Green Nest, formerly known as Harvest, who've had a bit of a rebrand. La Pizzica we're hoping to open in November, and we think Green Nest, are on a similar timescale there. And then two of the further units, 8 to 10 and 11, we're hopeful to have completions of the leases there, which are under heads of terms at the moment, early next year. So hopeful for those guys opening early to mid next year. Some of the activity that's happened during the summer, so we had our Summer of Sports taking place with the climbing wall and the big screen showing some Olympic events. That was very well attended and I think well received by the community. And then looking forward, we have our Winter Warmer event coming up 29th of November through to 1st of December. There'll be lots of things there, including a children's fun fair, which will be something interesting that we've not done before, as well as a small bar and a festive market, of course. A bit of a kind of operational update on some things that are happening in the near future as well. So we've got works occurring to that access road for the Durkin M4, M5 plot that I described a moment ago, and you'll start to see some yellow signs on the streets around Eddington. And we will be having road closures happening. As you can see the dates there, you can see them on the signs as well. So 26th of October is the first one, and then there's a continuation of road closures down to the south of Eddington Avenue. After that, where we'll be bringing in a crane to access Hill's M3 plot. Very importantly, there will not be through traffic in the site during that time, so it will cause diversions to go on the rest of the road network, so please do look out for that. And it will have impacts on bus journeys as well, and there'll be some relocations of where the bus services are stopping, so please keep an eye on that information if you're planning to travel during that time. And finally, it's already been mentioned, but just to confirm that we have recently gained planning consent to change the rising bollards that we have in Eddington Avenue here around our bus gate to an ANPR system. So the bollards will go away, but there will be an automatic system that will work on number plate recognition. And as part of that as well, we are looking to move the timing. So at the minute it operates 7 till 7 on weekdays. We're looking to expand that to 24 hours based on feedback we've received from the community over the last year or so. So look out for that implementation in the near future as well, but please do not use the bus gate because it will move from being a physical barrier to one that will automatically send traffic notices through the post. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing because I can't see any of the questions.
Fantastic. Many thanks, Matt. There's a few questions that have gone into the chat. Do you want me to read them out just to make it easier for you?
That would be wonderful. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, then. The first one that came in quite a while ago is, are you in a position to give an update in respect of the status of the university swimming pool that was a planning requirement on the site?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to say importantly on that is that the swimming pool was not a planning requirement of the Eddington development. So Eddington, like all similar housing developments, including Darwin Green, is required to make a financial contribution towards the provision of swimming pools within the wider Cambridge area. So we were set up to do that, and the payment that was covered within press reports and things was that payment being paid on time, as any other housing project would do. There was a slight nuance in the way that the university approached it, because we had plans to deliver a swimming pool down at Cambridge West, and so the planning agreement was made with the GCSPS that if we did deliver a swimming pool down at Cambridge West, then that financial contribution would go towards that, rather than going into the general pot that the council can deploy strategically where it requires swimming pools. So I think it's important to note that the Eddington site never had planning consent for a swimming pool and never had a requirement to deliver one. It has fulfilled its requirements in making a financial contribution. And then down at Cambridge West now, we have recently received our planning consent for the master plan, which includes an outline for a swimming pool adjacent to our sports centre. And the university will still be looking at that to bring forward as and when it is an appropriate time within the delivery of the Cambridge West master plan.
Thanks, Matt. That really does help clarify that question. So thank you for that. There's a question about post-commissioning, post-occupancy surveys and evaluations of residents, and whether the University of Cambridge is going to do any studies. I don't know whether it's worth saying that there is a wider report. I know it as the Stephen Platt report that has been published in the last few months, which looks at evaluations of new development in Greater Cambridge, and that includes the Eddington area, if I'm not mistaken. We can certainly provide a link to that report on our website update. It's really quite a comprehensive lesson learned review of how quality panels are influential in raising quality in new neighbourhoods. It uses a number of case studies across Greater Cambridge. So there is that quite up-to-date lessons learned document. But Matt, specifically for you on behalf of the University of Cambridge, is there any further plans for post-occupancy review?
Yeah, thanks, Philippa, and I'd encourage people to look at that report. We did contribute to it, and I think there's some important lessons learned in there, particularly on Eddington, both good and bad in terms of phasing of delivery. So on Eddington specific post-occupancy evaluation, we are constantly obviously speaking to the bulk of our current occupants, who are our employees and our tenants. So we are receiving constant feedback from those guys, which we are feeding very much the lessons learned from that into our future master plan plans in terms of delivery of the key worker housing. We obviously engage very closely through the Eddington Residents Association with the local market residents as well. And then coming up in this term, the university will be conducting a university-wide housing needs assessment. And this goes beyond Eddington to really look at what is the full scale of housing need generated by the university. And so there'll be a lot of information that comes from that will flow into the future phases of the master plan as well.
Fantastic, thank you. Now there's a question in the chat. It's quite a lengthy question about adoption of roads and play areas, but also roadworks and disruption. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to ask you to answer it now. I'm going to ask you to have a look at it, and then I'll come back to it at the end, so you've got a little bit more time to prepare on your response. Is that okay? So that's Jenny put that in the chat. But there is a more straightforward question for you, and that's in relation to the green spaces adjacent the M11 motorway. What plans are being put into place regarding noise mitigation?
Yeah, so the what we call the western edge, so the parkland adjacent to the M11, is still part of the green belt. So that's going to be landscaped and maintained as open green space by the university into the future. Part of that is there are further elements of kind of landscaping to do with mounds and hills and that kind of thing. So they will go some way to creating pockets of noise mitigation. Unfortunately, it's not possible to fully mitigate the noise, and it's better on some days than it is on others, depending on the way the wind's blowing. But we're confident that there will be areas of kind of serene quietness down there, but other parts that will still continue to suffer from noise from the M11.
Great, thank you for that update. Now there's another question, but that relates to something that's not within your control, and I can answer this one, or I can attempt to anyway. So there's a concern about the air conditioning plant at the Hyatt Hotel, which is very loud, and it makes sitting in the garden quite noisy. I'm going to give that action to look into to my colleague John from the Shared Planning Service. We will look into that, we will review that, and we will come back with a website update regarding that issue. Okay, I'm just going to check the final. Okay, what I think I will do is I'll come back because there's quite a few questions that I think we've answered, but we'll come back and look again at the end to see if there's any outstanding ones. We'll come back to if that's okay.
Great, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Matt. Okay, now moving on, we're a little bit ahead of our time now, but I'd like to introduce colleagues from the City Council's Community Development team. We have Steph Snowden and Susan Jackson, and they're going to provide a community update. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share a presentation I did. I just want to warn people that this is actually a recording. But we are here to answer questions as well, but we'll save those to the end if that's okay. So I'm just going to attempt to share my screen as I'm assuming that's not really working, so I'm going to try a different way. So let me try a different way. Apologies, everyone. I'm new to this. Good evening. My name is Sue Jackson and I am the Community Development Officer for Cambridge City Council. I work alongside my colleague Steph Snowden and I hope to give you a snapshot of what work we've been doing since the last meeting. The work we do is in partnership with residents. The ideas come from them. We work alongside many other organisations working in the community, and this list is not exhaustive. If I've missed an organisation, I've many apologies. If you're part of an organisation looking to start a community group in the area, do drop us a line. Alongside the award-winning Storiesfield Community Centre, which hosts concerts, weddings, but also party bookings, the community rooms in Darwin Green are now open for bookings. Please do contact them directly. The rooms are open on Wednesday mornings for locals to drop in and have a cuppa. The staff are excellent at making a cup of tea. They have a Facebook page where they will post local information. Please do contact them if you have any notices, and they are happy to put posters up in their windows for local residents to view. Now, a few photos from our photo album, from Lego clubs to Rhyme Time and to events like a Toys Life and Beyond. The next one will be on the 14th of December. There's a new stop for the mobile library in Darwin Green, the third Monday of the month at 3 p.m. and the next visit is the 21st of October, and that sits along the Eddington Mobile Library, which comes on the first Friday of the month at 9:30. Then some pictures from our holiday lunches with partners from Find My Wild, Cambridge Water, and lots of volunteers who helped to make that happen. Next, we've got a pop-up play that happened in Eddington in the summer, and there are plans to do one similar in Darwin Green on the plaza. The next photo shows the family workers who come from Cambridgeshire Child and Family Centre and visit Teddington at Storiesfield on the first Tuesday of the month. The next one will be the 5th of November. A very valuable service to have access to family support workers. And the last is not one of the City Council events, but there was a large, lovely play beach that happened in Eddington, which was a portal event, and the sand has been donated to the Cambridge City Council and it is now being utilised in our city parks. Some events just to highlight that are happening at the moment. We've got Rhyme Time and Lego Club. Rhyme Time is in Darwin Green and that's at 1:30 and that's being run by a volunteer for Cambridgeshire Libraries. Lego Club is run by the centre on Tuesday afternoons 4 till 5, term time only at Storiesfield, and that is great fun. We've also got a couple of holiday lunches happening, one in Darwin Green, which is on Tuesday the 29th, and one the next day on Wednesday the 30th of October in Storiesfield Centre, with lots of activities for primary school ages Siblings are more than welcome, and it's normally delicious food. There is also drop-in time for community at Darwin Green on Wednesday mornings, where you'll get a free cup of tea or coffee, and Storiesfield has open community space in the foyer when it's open. Do check their website for the times. You might find that Steph and I come knocking on your door, and I just wanted to explain a little bit about why we're doing that. That is for us to find out individual needs of the residents and demographic, any links that you might have to other areas, other community groups, and finding out those lovely community activators who I know will bring a lot of events in the future. We're also putting together an information pack that will hopefully be printed and be delivered to all the residents within Darwin Green, and these will highlight key services such as bins, roads, schools, GP surgeries, dentists, and give connection details of local groups and transport links. If you have any questions, please do email us at communitydevelopment@cambridge.gov.uk. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I'm assuming this is the end of the presentation. Okay, good.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Right, I'm going to see if there's any specific chats, specific questions in the Q&A. Doesn't look like there is. I think you've got off lightly this evening.
Well, thank you. But people can always email us at their email address they see on the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And obviously there's an opportunity if you do have any questions that can be answered later on this evening. Okay, well, we can move straight on now to our final speaker this evening. Our guest speaker is David Park from the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Integrated Care System. David's going to provide an update on health service facilities in Eddington and Darwin Green. Thank you very much, David. Over to you.
Thank you, Philippa, for the invite, and it's nice to be with you all tonight. My name's David Park. I'm Assistant Director for Infrastructure and Sustainability in the south of our patch. So that's sort of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, the south. And I'm focusing mainly on the estate needed for general practice to be delivered, so primary care services. So as part of the Section 106 obligations that were drawn up many years ago now in regards to Eddington and Darwin Green, we have the exciting opportunity to provide health services in the form of general practice and primary care at both Eddington and Darwin Green. We, over the last year, sent out bids really to all of our local providers, GP providers in the area of Eddington and Darwin Green that covers that area as a patient catchment registration area. And we had 6 contractors who were very interested to provide services from either Eddington or Darwin Green. We've now whittled those 6 down to 3 providers, 2 to be located at the university site at Eddington and 1 to be sited at Darwin Green. Eddington affords us around 700 square metres of internal space to provide general medical services. They're core GP services, but as we progress to move a lot of care out of large hospitals and provide more community care closer to home, we envisage not only general practice services there, but an array of other services like mental health services, like health visiting, perinatal mental health, antenatal, midwifery services, paediatrics, and so on and so forth. We are currently working very well with the university at Eddington, so working closely with Matt and Anna in regards to working up a schedule of accommodation requirements. We've employed a health planner working with the practice who wants to occupy that space to see what their needs and requirements are. So they're things like how many rooms do you need, what sort of rooms do you need, i.e. consulting rooms, treatment rooms, digital rooms, waiting areas, that type of thing. That's now going to be converted to an architect's plan and going through the design stages to get to a point where construction internally can begin on that core and shell part of the building. Equally, working very closely with Adrian at BDW in regards to occupation of health services at Darwin Green, which equates to around just over 500 square meters of net internal area. Again, we are at the stage now where we have a contractor that we're negotiating with who wants to work out of that site, and it won't be long now before BDW's commission an architect to draw up the schedule of accommodation requirements, i.e. the rooms that we need to deliver those services, into an architectural plan ready for the internal fit out at Darwin Green 2. I would say that these three contractors, so 2 at Eddington and 1 at Darwin Green, they belong to what we call a primary care network or integrated neighbourhood. Generally speaking, all of our GP practices across England now are part of what we call a primary care network. So that's a group of individual GP contractors who come together around populations of around 30 to 50,000 people, and that affords other services to be delivered within that primary care network. So, for example, outside of core hours, what we call enhanced hours from 6:30 to 8 o'clock Monday to Friday in the evenings and at weekends, one of those practices at least will be offering appointments for the whole of the primary care network patient group to be seen either in a surgery building or access through telephone or digital appointments too. So the beauty of belonging to a primary care network is that you may be receiving enhanced services and enhanced access on top of the core hours of 8 to 6:30 Monday to Friday. So with Eddington, we have 2 of those practices belonging to 2 different primary care networks, and likewise with Darwin Green, they belong to a wider primary care network. So this brings about more services to support the patients in the sites. The other thing to say is that in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, we've commissioned what we call additional roles. So the NHS pay for GPs to employ wider health professionals other than GPs and nurses and your more traditional healthcare providers. So we have, for example, social prescribers, pharmacists, paramedics, digital care navigators, and so on and so forth, working within that primary care network. So again, these are professionals who can provide more enhanced services at that sort of larger at scale population. And again, these enhance the services that patients who are registering either Eddington or Darwin Green will be able to receive, which is quite exciting. The other thing to say is not only are we contracting a GP contractor, which would primarily be the main caregiver at Eddington and Darwin Green, we have great interest from our community NHS trusts. So they're trusts who either provide mental health services or services like school nurses, like health visiting, like midwifery, and so on and so forth. So again, we are working with our trusts to think about what rooms they will require at both of those sites in order to offer more enhanced services for the populations. So we plan, and I guess very difficult with timelines, but just to give you an indication of where we are with Eddington at the moment, we sort of forecast that it'll take around 8 months now to get to a point where we have all of the architectural plans in place and for construction to start in the core and shell for fit out to obviously compliant health space. And again, we're on a similar sort of time trajectory with Darwin Green as well. So with a fair wind, we should be occupying both those sites probably in the summer, early summer of 26. I'm happy to take any questions or comments if I can answer them today. If not, I can get back to individuals with answers.
Thank you, David. That was really insightful. Thank you. There's a couple of questions that have come into the chat. Are you happy for me to just summarise them? Okay, one quite straightforward question. Do you know at this stage whether there'll be a pharmacy?
at Eddington or Darwin Green. So the pharmacy.
That's just the general question.
So so it's a good question. So without getting too technical, each health and wellbeing board that covers Cambridge and Peterborough has something called a pharmaceutical needs assessment, and these are very large documents that assess the needs for new pharmacies to open within any geographical area. These plans last for 3 years. We're coming to the end. We're coming into the third year of the last PNA, the Pharmaceutical Needs Assessment. So we're working closely now with our health and wellbeing boards and public health at the councils, both in Peterborough and Cambridgeshire, to start drafting the new PNA, the Pharmaceutical Needs Assessment, for the next 3 years. It takes around 12 months for these documents to be published. What I can say at the moment is the PNA that we're working to now does not allow new pharmacies to be given a license. It's deemed not necessary at the moment. There's enough pharmacy coverage. I think we would probably dispute that a little bit, given some of the recent closures we've seen, particularly with Lloyd's and other pharmacies that are struggling to make ends meet financially. I think one of the key commissioning components that NHS England has recently commissioned is the Pharmacy First services, where we're seeing pharmacies take on more enhanced services to provide some respite to general practitioners who can probably prescribe antibiotics for a range of disorders and can assess someone within a pharmacy rather than referring back to a GP. So that's all positive. And with that, I'm hoping that the new PNA for the next 3 years, which will be published in a year's time, will probably evidence that we do need some additional pharmacy space. So at the moment, I can't give a guarantee, or I can't sort of say that there will be an opportunity there. The other thing to add to pharmacies is that GPs, if they're not close to a pharmacy, either the surgery's more than a mile from a community pharmacy, then practices can apply for a license to dispense prescriptions. So they'll have their own internal dispensary, and I'm sure some of you may already receive that service from your local GP. So again, I know that the one of the contractors who wants to locate at Darwin Green is applying for a dispensing license there. So that could mean, if that's granted, and it's out of our sort of control, but if it is granted, then dispensing of medication will be on site.
No, thank you. That was quite a useful update. Yes. So much appreciated. Now I've got one question, more of an observation, perhaps something for you to feed back to your colleague. So it's a comment that's come in about I suppose it's the quality of the design, the buildings that are proposed to be built. Could you feedback, please, that there's been concerns about design being potentially dull, bland, ugly, and identity kit, and that it's important to, for example, take inspiration from local history and natural history rather than being an off-the-shelf minimalist pattern book. I think that's quite an interesting observation that maybe not just yourself, but all of us involved in the planning and development process can take back to our work. But I'm sure you'll pass that feedback on, won't you?
Well, indeed, and these, the health space demise are core shells that have been built for a number of years now, and we just need to make sure that we fit them out internally to become health functioning buildings.
Great, thank you. Now, looking at the chat, it doesn't look like we've got anything further specifically for you, but I might come back to you shortly if anything else crops up. So thank you very much indeed for your presentation this evening.
Pleasure.
Okay, so we're very much ahead of time. I'm able now to move into a general questions and answer session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the Q&A and work upwards just to see if there are any questions that we might have missed. Now, Philippa Evans put a question into the chat about half an hour ago. This will be a question specifically, I believe, for Adrian in respect of the Darwin Green development. I don't know if you've seen it, Adrian, but I'll just read it out. In the approved BDW2 Darwin Green site plans, there's a crucial maintenance path running alongside the ditch lying at the bottom of the Woodlark Road Gardens. For some time now, large posts and a fence stand where that crucial maintenance path could be. Could you confirm that the maintenance path will be built and secured as shown in the approved plans? Have you already addressed it, Adrian? You're ahead of me.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. As part of the plan permission, we have to secure the site boundaries with the fencing, and until such time as those properties are going to be built adjacent to those, the site perimeter fencing will remain in place. Obviously, the properties that back onto the Woodlark Road are not going to be built for quite some time yet, so therefore the maintenance path will only be installed when those properties are built.
Great, thank you. Sorry that I'd missed you'd already addressed that one. Thank you. Okay, right. I'm going to bring in Matt. Yep, you next. Have you had a chance to have a look at Jenny's question? Are you able to give a little summary and update in respect of that, please?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you for the question, Jenny. I think it's not really a fair characterisation of why the university retains a lot of the infrastructure at Eddington. So local authorities typically no longer adopt things like play parks and open green space. They normally fall within a community management agreement, and at Eddington, the university is the long-term custodian of all of those facilities. Some of our primary roads like Choring Way and Eddington Avenue have been built to adoptable standards, so they in theory at some point could be adopted by the local highways authority. That hasn't happened yet, and there's various reasons for that, in particular things like adoption of sewer pipes underneath and other technical stuff. But obviously, given where we're looking at the future of the master plan and understanding what our road network's going to look like, that's something that we'd want to reserve until we understand the full picture of the Eddington road network. In terms of timing, so the university has worked with the county and GCSPS planners to inform them of our plans around road closures and things. Critically, the reason why there's lots of things happening in that same week is because it's half term. And so we see a dramatic reduction in cars coming down Huntingdon Road and Madingley Road during half term, and therefore it's the most appropriate time to do roadworks. In particular for us at Eddington, the works that we are doing are just north of the primary school. So it's absolutely necessary that we do these works at a time when we've not got all of our pupils coming in to the primary school. So that has to happen. And yes, it looks like there are other works occurring at the same time on Huntingdon Road and Madingley Road for similar reasons. So there absolutely will be disruption during that week, but by doing it during half term, it will significantly reduce the disruption and the number of people it impacts.
Great, many thanks for that update, Matt. Now there was another question about the bus gate. Will the bus gate be open at weekends?
No, so our new planning consent allows us to keep it closed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there's still obviously access to both other sides of the bus gate using Choring Way, but we intend to improve the kind of pedestrian experience across that space by limiting it just to buses and taxis.
Great, many thanks. Okay, I think that's all specifically for you. Let's have a look now at the chat again. A general question, a wider question about the consideration that planners can make for arts, sports, leisure facilities that function as a regional facility, given Cambridge's status as a regional centre. I think this is probably one for us to take away and give a more considered response. So we'll take that as an action and we'll provide an update in due course on the website, given that's got sort of more wider remit than just simply the Darwin Green and the Northwest and West Cambridge developments. Okay, now a question from Quentin, not directly related to the development. The Darwin Green Residents Association was mentioned a couple of times, but limited information. Do we have any resources? Right, okay. Does anyone know anything about the Darwin Green? I'm looking at John, and helpfully he's raised his hand and turned his camera on. John, could you provide an update? That's great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip. Well, I was probably going to signpost Suzanne or Steph to come in with, basically, because the incredible thing with Darwin Green is that there's not one official residents association as such. I think there's a number of groups that appear on WhatsApp. One has websites, and I think there's it'd be really nice in the future, I think, that everyone could come together. But I don't know if particularly the Darwin Green Residents Association was mentioned. I don't know whether Suzanne has any more information, whether she can come on or Steph can come on and give any more information about it.
I've
Adrian,
actually just dropped my email in, so I think Quintin, if you want to email me, I can pass any questions that you have with the Darwin Green Resident Association directly on to one of the resident association members. So it is just starting. It's not officially formulated or constituted yet, so it's bubbling away. But if you're interested in joining, then I'm sure that they'd be happy to have a chat to you.
I've just put in the chat, Quintin, the email address that if you email to that email address, they will respond to you.
Oh, thank you everyone for your responses. Great team effort. Thank you.
If you can hear me, thanks a lot for the email address. And the first residents of phase 2 in Darwin Green are very happy with us so far.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for the feedback. Brilliant. Thank you. Now, it doesn't look like we have any further questions that remain unanswered. I'll just do one final check. No, so we are very much running ahead of time. So I think I'm going to bring to a close now this session. Unless, John, it looks like you've got your hand up. Or am I? No, you haven't got your hand up. No, it's just some flickering in your background. That's okay. Right, so I will move on now to closing this forum. I would like to thank all presenters, panelists, officers and attendees for joining us this evening. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the communities teams from both authorities. You're so good at supporting me in this role and you work so hard behind the scenes to organise and deliver these forums. We will aim to have the recording and presentations from today's meeting on our forum webpage within the next 2 weeks. And a date for your diary, we look forward to seeing you all again in person at the next forum, which will be in the new year on Wednesday, the 26th of February. So thank you all for joining us this evening, and I wish you a very good evening. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.